Welcome to Playful Beginnings, a podcast about the magic of play therapy for therapists, students, and anyone interested. In our podcast, we'll explore the deeper understanding of play therapy and the skills we use when working with children.
We hope to help you understand the why behind what we do and how it helps kids heal and grow. I'm Dr. Kristie Opiola, a working play therapist and university professor in North Carolina.
I'm Dr. Maggie Parker, a play therapist and professor in DC. Hey, Kristie.
Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning. How are you?
I am okay. How are you?
Okay.
That's my term for today. I am okay.
Yes. I think there's a lot happening, and we're both kind of feeling that. And I'm sure that our listeners are feeling a lot of that too.
And I think it's important to acknowledge where you really are each day instead of, I'm good, I'm great, when maybe you're struggling. And being okay is still okay.
Yeah, we're figuring it out.
So we
Well,
are.
this
That
is
authentic
always
side of ourselves.
yeah, the authentic part I have to sometimes rein in and you have to know who you can be authentic with. And so I think this is authentic enough for today, but it is very truly, this is a highlight of the week. And so it's very exciting to be able to be here. And I think that is very authentic.
Yeah, I always look forward to these. So
yeah. So last week we talked about what and why we set limits. And so today we want to talk about how we set limits. So
excitement.
Party. And I think these, again, as we preface this is very helpful for play therapists, both who are wanting to become play therapists and play therapists that are already in the field, and also for teachers and parents and anybody who's working with children. I think this is a really helpful skill that can be really beneficial.
And I do want to say, if this is the first episode you're listening to, we do highly encourage you to go back to our episode the week before of the what and why, because limit can be used with poor intent, and then they sound more like threats or manipulation. And then within the child-centered lens, that's not the purpose. Limit setting. And so it is really important. We know that this model works. We know it works well, but it works most effectively when you have the why behind it, so that you can kind of go through the steps of limit setting with a lot of effectiveness, but also a ton of empathy, a ton of acceptance, as well as really wanting to understand the child and support the child.
And I think that limit setting too really is a lot of self-reflection, at least for me, that I'm doing a lot of self-reflection, hopefully not necessarily in that moment, but though my thoughts tend to race pretty quickly when limit settings are coming up, that I'm trying to kind of decipher the why and the how behind what I'm doing, and teasing those kind of things apart.
And do you need to set it? Like, I think that's one of the biggest struggles sometimes, is in the moment we don't realize we should be setting a limit, or we jump so quickly because we're being reactionary that we set something, and then afterwards we're like, I don't think that was needed. Like we question ourselves, was that even needed?
Was that about me right now? Like, am I just feeling anxious or okay? Or, whatever that may be, is that impacting this? And so it does, I think, require a lot of self-reflection, but I think that's a lot of what child-centered is. And we talk a lot about how it is, a skill of becoming and being and who we are. And so that just requires a lot of self-reflection, and that can be done in consultation and supervision. And so really, I think that especially when we talk about limits, I really try and reflect with peers and thinking and really exploring myself. But
I always have to remind myself why we're setting the limit. It's not about controlling the child or changing them. It's about helping them learn self-control, self-regulation skills, so that they're able to do that in the future instead of being controlled by another person or trying to figure out. And so that is something I lean on quite heavily when I'm thinking about limits or reflecting on limits that I have set, or maybe I feel I should have set, how would this have helped the child in the
Mhm.
moment? And
Mhm.
also, right, like what is the impact on our relationship? Because I think
Right.
we often skip over that when we are in a state of panic with kids and kids' behavior.
Yeah.
So,
Because we
and I
haven't
think in
quit.
one of our, yeah, I think in one of our first episodes, we shared, some of our challenges and limit setting being part of our challenges as play therapists.
Yeah.
Um, and so,
And we may have so much that we have to break this into the two, and we can tell you some of our own experiences in limit setting
some
and
great stories.
lessons
Yeah.
we've learned from that experience. But yeah.
Scoldings I got from Dr. Landra.
Oh.
Not really. He doesn't really scold, but he had strong words for one of my sessions and choosing not to set a limit, which
Oh yeah,
provided
I
a lack of
remember some of
safety.
those.
Yeah,
Remember some of
yeah,
those. But okay,
yeah.
so what when you're thinking about how,
Mhm.
what go through it for us.
So within child centered, we use the acronym ACT as our kind of limit setting model. And I will say, not everyone uses ACT. Some people use AC, and then the T is like
Okay.
a potential, but not a requirement. But this model helps guide us through the steps of setting a limit. And if we use the full ACT model, it's a 3-step model. So the first step is acknowledging the feelings of the child. And I always extend it past feelings. I think of wants, desires, needs, because sometimes that's what's driving behavior more than a feeling. So that's the first step. That's the A. So acknowledge the feelings. C is to communicate the limit. And then T is to target an alternative behavior that's acceptable to both the child and to the therapist. And so that's the ACT model. We're going to break it down each step um, and kind of discuss, the A, the C, and T independently now.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that we are wanting to recognize the emotional component of this and then ground
Mm-hmm.
that behavior in reality. And
Yep.
then in the event that the child is dysregulated or young, then targeting alternatives that are ways in which the alternatives are then behaviors that they can do to express that emotion in ways that aren't going to jeopardize, which feels like a big word, but impact perhaps the safety of the room, the safety of the child,
Yep.
the relationship and the therapist. And so
Yeah.
offering them that recognition of the emotion behind it, I think is a very important piece and something that doesn't often, I think, happen outside. Really. I think when I think about myself as a parent, how easy I'm like, just stop. No, don't.
Yeah.
And thinking about what it is that they're trying to communicate to me in those moments. And I think, and this is kind of veering off than what we've talked about, but I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes this is where gentle parenting gets kind of confused, is that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not that you're just accepting of all things. Yes, I'm accepting of all emotions, and there are limits to how those emotions are expressed. And
Yeah.
acknowledging the emotion doesn't water down or dismiss the limit. I think it bolsters the limit, because when you feel understood and cared for and believed in and trusted, then
Mm-hmm.
I think it's becomes less of that kind of power of, yeah, watch me. But maybe that's just my perspective.
No, I think kids can sometimes feel disempowered, and as they seek control or seek a sense of autonomy and independence, right, that power struggles can really come in. And
Mm-hmm.
I do agree. I think gentle parenting has been really misunderstood and misperceived.
Mm-hmm.
um, and it is different than maybe how we've historically looked at parenting approaches or looked at ways to help children, especially when they're feeling out of control or they're feeling when their behavior gets more than what we like
Yeah.
in a situation.
Yeah. And so when you're doing the A part, acknowledging the
Mm-hmm.
feeling, it's really important to have that empathy and care and understanding, right?
Yeah.
So you're still doing that. I'm here, I hear you, I understand, and I care. And help. I personally think that that helps. It helps in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that's a very important piece. And whether it's you're feeling frustrated or you're sad or you're disappointed or you really want to do that, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's acknowledging that piece. Just like you said, it doesn't have to always be a feeling. It can be a want, a desire. And so I think that's an important first step.
And I think this goes back to when we talked about reflecting feelings too. It's not saying that I accept, or it's not saying that I'm okay with, I don't know how I want to say this, but it's not that I'm agreeing with what you're experiencing or the way you're trying to experience it. It's really more about I am acknowledging and recognizing in you that this is a struggle and you have this strong emotional response or a strong desire or want, right, in that moment. And I think that's important when kids feel like we're understanding them or validating their internal experience. It's easier for them to then become more regulated or to at least tap in and have greater awareness what is happening for them in that moment.
Yeah.
I also find on the A, it's sometimes really helpful to say the kid's name first. And we don't often talk about
Don't.
that, but let the kid, grab their attention for a second, especially as they are having a lot of fun or becoming overwhelmed or a little out of control or, really testing something to. So before you even start acknowledging the feeling, to say their name. So Maggie, and then go through the A. And I think that can be an important piece so that the kid really knows you are addressing them. Because sometimes when things get really hectic in the playroom, they might not hear the first few words you say. So by utilizing their name first, you're grabbing their attention so then they can hear the important parts that you want to communicate to them, which is acknowledging and recognizing what's happening internally for them.
Yeah. And I think something that you said that it's really important to draw attention to it. Sometimes it's excitement. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to scale this wall, it's really exciting for them. And so it's not always the limit of an a, I don't want to say negative emotion because that doesn't feel good, right? But it's not always.
And like a harder emotion. Yeah.
It can be very much excitement and joy that you're like, eh, you really want.
And
Nah, it's not for doing.
yeah,
So
and sometimes kids are so in their imagination and in their role playing that they forget that it's actually them you're talking to. And so using their name can be an important component of starting this ACT model.
mhm. And then when we think about communicating the limit, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so important to keep it short. And the way you word it is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like, we don't do that here, I think that sends a message when you say we, but you're not doing it, right? I'm not engaging in this. And so that kind of
Yeah.
waters it down a little bit, I think. And it takes the oomph out of it, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of why we do that is to feel more, I don't know if it feels more kind or inclusive.
I think we do a lot of coding in our language just to each other and in particular to kids. So we use a lot of confusing sentence structure to try to be clear and concise and not seem like the bad guy sometimes. And so we, try to soften it or we add words or we give away our own
Power.
sense of power or control in the room. And that can actually send a really confusing message to the child. I think it also increases power struggles. So, you can't do this. And they're watch me, I sure as much can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
You
so
want to
we
bet?
want to, right? So I think what Maggie's saying in communicating the limit, we really want to make it concise and clear to the child. So I was always trained, you should say it like, the sky is blue today. If your
Yeah,
sky is blue today, if your sky is cloudy, you want to make it where it's hard to have an argument, so that
right.
clear and concise is important.
Yes. So I think about it a lot. And I think the examples I'm about to give are more that I'm drawing from outside of the playroom. So bring me back if I needed to. But people aren't for hitting. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's done. Instead of don't hit your sister or don't hit me or I don't hit when you hit me.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't for hitting. That covers all of the bases. It is short, it is concise, it is clear, and it is for all things in this space.
Yeah.
Toys aren't for breaking.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, you're saying that it takes away any shame or blame
Right.
that might inadvertently be like embedded in the message. Um, so it's not wrong to want to, to have this emotional reaction or this desire or need, but let's base this, in reality. Let's put this in the ideals of safety and protection. And here's how I'm able to do this pretty clearly,
Mm-hmm.
for kids, which is making short, concise statements. People are not for hitting.
Right. Yeah. And then is there more we should talk about on the C?
I would say that you do want to be firm and empathic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes what happens is we get really firm, but almost to an aggressive side of being firm
Mm-hmm.
without staying emotionally connected to the kiddo. So I
Right.
think that idea of having empathy built into how you say it. And I will say, when we get through this model, if you have to repeat this model, you need to increase your empathic responding as you're increasing it. Typically, we do the opposite. We get more rigid and strict, but or from my experience, that will create more power differential between you and the child. So staying empathic so they really can hear that you're
Right.
understanding them is really important, and that this is hard for them. And so, and able to communicate that, you do have to have a level of empathy in how you're stating or communicating the limit.
And so it
This,
requires a lot of breath work for me. I need to
mm-hmm.
calm myself down. I need to regulate myself to continue to be empathic. And I think that's really an important piece.
Yeah. And I think Bruce Perry is someone who says, like, the best way to help a child regulate is to regulate yourself first.
Yeah.
And so that is true for us as play therapists, as it is for parents or teachers. How we model things is important, and how we communicate our statements or request of kids is equally as important.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so,
So really being aware of that, and especially when you're watching your tapes back, are you saying people aren't for hitting? Are you
yeah,
saying, you know, you really want to do that and people are not for hitting?
yeah,
And I think that's really important.
yeah. Mackie, do you want to take us to the final stage in the ACT model?
Yeah. So in Dr. Landris' model, the T is targeting alternatives. And this is one that I always have in the back of my mind, but I may
Mm-hmm.
not always say it. And so I think there's some nuance here that's important to explore. So sometimes when kids are really dysregulated, or they're really overwhelmed, or they're very young, I'm likely going to target alternatives. So you are really frustrated, people aren't for hitting. You can choose to crumple the paper, or you can choose to hit the egg carton. And so I'm targeting alternatives that they can express that underlying emotion and experience in ways that are not going to impact the safety of all of the things. This, I don't always use this because I do believe the child has the innate capacity to identify these things for themselves. And I want to communicate that trust in them for doing it. And so it's something that I'm thinking about a lot in the moment. And it really requires a strong relationship and understanding of the child in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think too, it's this is a piece perhaps where you can kind of think ahead of time. You can't think of where limits are going to be, right? Because it happens a lot. And you can think about what are some ways in this space, right? So the egg carton, I think, is something that is such a great thing to have because it can be used in so many different ways. For what you can cut versus what you can't cut, those kind of ideas in your head percolating so that you're not grasping for something in the moment that feels disingenuous or engaging in a power struggle. Is that?
Yeah. The only thing I would add, and I think you hinted to it, but I don't know if you made it like totally clear, is when we create these alternatives, you're thinking of two ways for a kid to express what they're experiencing in ways that would be socially or personally acceptable to both you and the child. And so we want to make sure that we're not putting a threat in there or we're manipulating the child. So sometimes if you give one alternative that is what you want them to do and one alternative that would not be something they would ever choose, that's called manipulation. If you do one alternative of what you want and then one that would be a severe punishment, that's that's considered a threat to the child. And so you need to pick behavior or actions that they can still get what you're stating in the A. So whatever that feeling, want, desire, need in the playroom, just in a different way that would be socially acceptable. So if they were going to, I think the one that Dr. Landreth uses in his book, and I know when we teach CPRT, we use a lot, is being shot with the dart gun, right? And so an alternative would be, what else could they shoot that would be acceptable in the room and that would feel like their need was getting met for the child. So would that be hitting the baby doll? Would that be shooting at the wall? Would that be at the bot bag? Would that be at the ceiling, right? Whatever would feel okay for you and the child to still get that need met would be where you would choose or what choices you would give the child. Another thing is you want to limit the choices. You don't want to give them 30 decisions. You want to really limit it to 2, maybe 3 at max. And I would only do 3 if they're much older. I wouldn't give a really young children more than 2 choices. And the reason for that is we don't want to overwhelm them so that it makes it hard to make a decision.
Right.
And so we do want to make it where they could get that need met or try to get that need met in an acceptable way and make that choice in the playroom, which goes to that belief of children in their capacity to redirect, their capacity to get themselves under control, and just the innate belief in children.
Right. Because if you give one, it's a directive. If you give too many, it's overwhelming.
Yep.
So 2 is that sweet spot.
Yeah.
So
the other thing Maggie alluded to in the beginning is sometimes she doesn't get this.
Right.
And I also want to say sometimes I'll give 2 choices and maybe the 2 choices don't fully meet what the child is wanting and they give an alternative and the alternative I'm okay with, right? It feels like it meets their need. Don't get in a power struggle. Don't go back to say, no, these are the only 2 choices I gave you and therefore you have to follow through with these 2 choices. If it's an okay choice, why is that a problem? It's encouraging a child's decision making. It's encouraging their autonomy and independence in the playroom. So I would be that would work too, right? And let the child go with whatever the third alternative they suggested. And for some kids, they need a stronger sense of control in the playroom, so they will come up with alternatives to the decisions. But hopefully, the alternatives they're coming up with are acceptable alternatives, are based in reality. And if they're not, that is when you do lean back on, I know that sounds like fun. You can, shoot this or that. And then you go back to the choices that you originally gave. But if they come up with a third positive alternative, it is okay to go with that third positive alternative.
Yes. Then reiterating, oh, okay. And again, then you start that process again.
Yes.
And I think that's important. I'm trying to decide, do we want to go in? Okay. One thing that,
I will say that we do repeat this method 3 times.
yes.
And I think some people jump quickly when it doesn't work the first time or they try something different. It is important because the ACT model is putting some responsibility on the child. And so we have to give them a chance to absorb our message, right? And the limit that we've set, and then opportunity for them to get themselves under control or to alter the actions that they're taking in the moment. So you may repeat this 3 times before you move on to the more advanced limit setting, which is I think where you were headed to next. Maggie, yeah.
So sometimes, Kristie, you talked about this before, there are certain things and the child's really struggling to adhere to the limit. And so it may be that for 3 times you're like, oh, you really want to do that? That's not for doing. And then you can bring in after that third time, you can choose to do this or you can choose to do that. You want to be really careful not to, like Kristie just said, jump to, okay, now you can't do it at all.
Yeah,
so
or take it away altogether.
Take it away. And so you really want to be calm and consistent and give them that opportunity to bring themselves under control. If that's not happening without targeted alternatives, then you can bring in targeted alternatives. And then if that's not working, usually, so 6. And so this may take longer than just 6 seconds. This is a long, a couple minutes potentially. And then it may become, if you choose, you really want to do that. If, that's not for doing. If you choose to continue to do this, you choose not to play with the scissors. It's like the example I'm thinking of. And then it starts over again, right? You're not taking the scissors from the child. You're still believing in their capacity to bring themselves under control. You're really disappointed that you chose not to play with the scissors. You can choose to give them to me, or you can choose to put them here. You really don't like that choice.
Yeah.
Scissors are not for playing with. You can choose, so it's really kind of continuing that. And I think you can speak to, I don't know if we want to talk about this later, but well, thank you, Kristie. This has been really helpful and an in-depth exploration.
Yes. Thanks, Maggie. We appreciate everyone who is tuning in. Please remember to check us out on all the socials. You'll find us under Play Therapy Space. And then you can also go to our website, which is playtherapyspace.com. It's right above me here. And you can also email us. We'd love to hear from you guys. So if you have ideas, you like something that we shared, please let us know at info@playtherapyspace.com, or you can email us personally if you want to talk specifically to Maggie. You can email her at maggie@playtherapyspace.com, or if you want to speak with me, at Kristie@playtherapyspace.com. We look forward to seeing you guys next week, as well as hearing from anyone who is interested in touching base with us. And please don't forget to like and subscribe below.
Yep. Thank you, Kristie.
Bye.
Bye.